Your alumni love helping students and fellow graduates, but they simply don't have time to attend every event, answer every call, or learn yet another online platform. With Protopia, making an impact is easier than it's ever been before. Ever. There's no new app to sign up for or use in our already busy lives. Students, alumni, or even staff can quickly ask for advice or networking via a simple form, email, or text. Protopia's artificial intelligence searches the institution's existing alumni data to find the best experts that are the most likely to assist based on experience, availability, location, and other factors. Each matched alum receives a direct, blind email to ask them to help, giving alumni full control over if and how they want to respond, whether that's by email, call, or a virtual meeting. And if it's not a good time, Protopia's AI simply reaches out to the next alum until the question has been answered. The student receives advice right into her email inbox and is coached to engage the alum to grow her professional network. Finally, our rich dashboard lets staff follow along, view detailed engagement analytics, and access updated alumni data. Protopia. Simple for them, simple for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for listening to Alumless for August 28th, 2026. This is the When the Membership Model Works edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood, and I am not joined yet by CMAC founder and CEO Chris Marshall. Chris is on his way back from New Orleans, experiencing a 14-hour delay. So I am thrilled to get our conversation started with today's special guest, Reggie Bustinza, who is the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations and the Chief Executive Officer of the Penn State Alumni Association. We are going to get our conversation started, and we'll add Chris to the mix here momentarily. On the show, we talk about alumni and constituent engagement strategies in education advancement. We are pre-recorded today, but do say hello in the comments of the LinkedIn event. If you're listening to us by podcast, we appreciate you adding us to your feed. And we are grateful for the teams at Protopia, Alumni Q, Richmond Associates, and Givsy's version 2.ai for being our Alumless presenting sponsors for season 4. Season 4 already, Reggie.
Hard to believe. Amazing.
Hard to believe. It's great to have you on the show. Excited to talk with you about your new role at Penn State. Tara, a little bit about it. This is a dream come true, I believe you've been quoted as saying, for this particular role at Penn State. And talk about the job and how it's been since you got started and what these first few weeks have been like since getting the chance to sit in that seat.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Been looking forward to this for a while, so I appreciate your time. I mean, the phrase drinking from the fire hose has been thrown around a lot in my first few weeks, and I think it's a pretty appropriate phrase. That's how I feel at times. It's a huge organization, a huge institution, and a huge alumni association. So that's been really wonderful in a lot of ways, and that's part of why it attracted me. Growing up, I played with Legos a lot. I loved them as a kid and into my young adulthood, you could say even. And I always wanted to have the most Legos because the more Legos you had, the more things you could build, right? And this has been a dream job because I have pretty much the biggest Lego kit I could ever imagine to get to build whatever we dream of. And it's a wonderful team that is excited about trying new things. We're excited about being on the leading edge of opportunities to experiment and be innovative. And we have the resources and the alumni base, more importantly, to support those experimentations. So, it has been the dream that I'd hoped it would be. And I look forward to the years to come.
Yeah. When you talk about sort of drinking from the fire hose, like how have you tackled these first few weeks? There's a lot of listening to do, a lot of introducing to do. Like, what's been your strategy so far as you've worked to get to know your team and your colleagues across Happy Valley, and of course your alums.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny you asked the question because there was a podcast that you guys did not that long ago, where I think Chris was talking a little bit about how sometimes for these roles you actually start your work before you're even hired, and I think that as I was listening, I kind of was chuckling and nodding because that's exactly what happened here. Universities were not known for being nimble. Things don't usually move at a super rapid pace, and this hiring process went on for many, many, many months, with many components and elements. And every step of the way, I did my best to do my research and understand who I would be meeting with, what might drive them and motivate them, what's the historical context of the role and of the institution. So, in reality, the work to onboard I started on it months ago, months before I was hired, months before I got announced, and months before I started. Um, that has been really the bulk of what I've been focused on, which is listening, trying to listen and learn and ask a lot of questions. There are many stakeholders here. It's a huge institution. We have 20 campuses. We're all centralized in terms of our brand and our identity and our leadership. So we're not spaced out over the state, although there are campuses all over the Commonwealth. Um, because of that complexity, there's been a lot to learn. While there is one alumni association for all the campuses, many of the campuses have their own embedded professionals, for example, their own programming. So, we have campuses that specialize in different fields of study, which each carry their own unique models for teaching and learning, but also for the alumni experience. So there's been a lot of learning on that end. Many colleagues, it's a big team, both within the Alumni Association or the Alumni Relations, but also for the division. So there's been a lot to learn there. So yeah, I mean, really, I've been focused on learning and listening. I will say that after about a month and a half on the job now, themes are emerging. I'm starting to hear consistencies among different stakeholders that I speak with. Opportunities for improvement and strengths. And that's been encouraging because I wasn't brought in here to maintain the status quo. I was brought in here to try to change and improve things. And we have some opportunities for that. And I'm excited for that.
Awesome. That's great. Um, You've led alumni shops at Northern Illinois, Lewis, Bradley. This is not, of course, your first rodeo. What type of the work, the experiences that you've had at those other institutions really translated instantly at Penn State, and what is sort of like a whole new animal for you? I guess obviously scale is one of the big ones, right? But I'm sure there are others, things that are totally different, but then possibly some things that really translated nicely.
Yeah. I don't think that human nature changes no matter where you are, right? Humans want to feel connected. They want to belong. And that gets to the heart of our profession. We really are trying to engineer personal relationships at scale. And you're going to run into the same challenges if you're at a smaller liberal arts private school with an alumni base of 15,000, or if you're at a school like NIU, where I spent 10 years with an alumni base of 250,000, or at a Penn State with an alumni base of 820,000. The nature of humans and how we want to connect with each other and with our institutions, that doesn't really change. What does change are the resources that we have to do that. The scale allows us to start doing segmentation with an efficiency that isn't available. Populations that at Bradley with an alumni base of 50,000 were just not large enough for us to dedicate the resources to developing that population. At Penn State, the population might be thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, which then justifies diving into that population and working with them in a more bespoke approach. I think that what translates, though, ultimately is the blocking and tackling, as my old boss used to call it. The fundamentals, right? Treating people with respect, looking at ROI to the extent that we can, and I hope we get into that conversation a little bit because that's an area where my thinking has evolved tremendously over the years. And faculty are faculty, right? Students are students. And people are people. So a lot of those things have been the same and really translated, I think well. The other thing I'll add is I think that there's this kind of mindset. And being now at a Big Ten institution, I can speak a little bit more from this side of the fence, that you have to have been at a large shop to be a part of leadership at a large shop. I actually disagree with that pretty adamantly. Um, you know, I'm fortunate here at Penn State because I won't say we can just throw resources at a problem, but we have the opportunity to leverage resources in a way that I didn't at like Bradley or Lewis. What that does is at some of the smaller shops, we had to be innovative. We had to think differently in order to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish because we couldn't just spend our way out of it. We couldn't just put more people on it, and we couldn't create positions of, assistant director of, engineering alumni engagement in the Southeast Ohio region. Those things weren't options for us. We were more generalists, and we had to be really creative in how we did things. If anything scales to me, it's that entrepreneurial mindset that is honed, I think, at a higher level at some of the more resource challenged or smaller shops, smaller teams than at some of these massive state schools.
Imagine you came into the role with some expectations and that some of those were met, but there was probably some things that surprised you early on here that you really couldn't have anticipated from, the outside. You mentioned that actually the job started well before your first day. But there's definitely some insights into the culture, the people, the unique characteristics, the evolutionary stage of the institution that are totally unique. But what surprised you the most here early on?
Well, first I have to say hello to our friend Chris. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Yeah, Chris hopped on.
Hey,
Chris,
guys.
I explained your planes, trains, and automobiles situation here, and I'm glad you made it.
Not
15
bad,
hours.
because it was telling me 3:30 when I was going to get here, and the guy who drove me home was set a land speed record, so it all worked out. Reggie, good to see you, man. How hung my pennant for you? You even got that up there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm in a different office. I was telling Ryan before we started that there's my office overlooks some event space, and there's about 100 young women engineering students down there right now, and they are having a great time. But it was a little distracting in terms of the sound bleeding into the recording here. So, Ryan had we were having a conversation here about some of the surprises I've had starting at Penn State, and I think there's two that I really would kind of glom onto. The first one is, and I think I kind of knew this, but the amount has surprised me, and that is at an institution of this size, the sheer quantity and diversity of stakeholder has been really, honestly, a little more than I anticipated. And NIU is not a small school. I mean, it is a fairly good sized institution. But when you get to a place like Penn State with all these campuses and all these colleges and just such a diversity of constituency, it really has that surprised me a little more than I think I would have expected it to. I was prepared, but not as prepared as maybe I should have been for that. The other thing that I don't think I could have possibly seen coming is the unbelievable passion of Penn Staters. And, in this field, I think we tend to feel that you're going to get your most passionate alumni base from some of the smaller schools, perhaps the Ivies, private institutions where there's that more personalized feel of the experience. Man, are Penn Staters passionate? I mean, it is crazy. And I don't just mean here in State College or in Happy Valley. I mean, when I was in the process of interviewing, I moved here from the Chicago area, from the western suburbs. And the amount of Penn State gear I started noticing that, I'm sure it had been out there all along, I just hadn't noticed it before, was shocking. And the amount of outreach I've received since the announcement really went out, has been just, overwhelming in the best way possible. And that has been a surprise, a pleasant surprise, but definitely a surprise. I don't think anybody told me that Penn Staters were quite as invested in their institution as they are.
Do you know the data? How many alums? How many students? Undergrad, grad? How many campuses? Are those numbers in your head yet? Is it too soon?
Yeah. So we have 20 Commonwealth campuses. right now. And we're all part of one system that is a centralized system. So, we all Commonwealth campuses share, we are all in the same advancement team. We're all under the same Alumni Association umbrella, same administrative umbrella. We have 820,000 living alumni. The advancement division is over 600 people in our division. My team is about 65. And then as far as students, we have about 90,000 students, half of which are here at the University Park campus, the central campus, and then the other half are distributed among the Commonwealth campuses.
One point, I did a project when Paul first got there, your predecessor, and there were 23 campuses. 3 have closed fairly recently. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we're in the process of closing another 7, unfortunately.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, there's some history there. When the Commonwealth campuses were created, for those who aren't familiar with Pennsylvania, which is, by the way, a truly beautiful place. I love the outdoors, so I'm very much loving it. But we have a lot of mountains and hills here, a lot of valleys. And before the interstate highway system, it was very difficult to get around the state. And so, along with the land grant institution model, we also created a bunch of these Commonwealth campuses because it was very hard to get around the state to any part. And State College is pretty much dead center. But I mean, if you're out in Erie or, on the eastern side out there by Philly, for example, it was very difficult. So for that reason, the Commonwealth campuses, there were so many of them distributed around the state. Times have changed. We don't have the same populations at these campuses that we once did. And the university leadership made a decision, the president and the board of trustees, I think maybe
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry I went off script into a negative area there, but it's real. I mean, we're seeing this across the country in higher education. This is a real, right sizing of campus, of the higher ed supply, if you will, in general, is a real thing that many schools are facing. So I'll come back back on script, and we'll talk about more positive stuff, like the fact that you guys run the largest dues paying membership program in the world, 107 in higher ed, I believe it is. 172,000 members. Is that right? Is that the?
Yeah, that's correct. And we're at 176 right now. So, and our goal is to grow to 200,000 in the next few years here.
Great. So while the field is moving towards all alums or members kind of a mindset, it's working at Penn State.
Yeah.
I would argue that it's one of maybe 5 where it might work. There's very few others. But before I give you my take, I want to hear your thoughts on it. Why is it working there?
Yeah, this is where I tip my hat to those that came before, to Paul and others who did a great job with this program and really built it up. There's a few reasons why I think it works at Penn State, and yes, the passion of Penn Staters does have something to do with it. There's an expectation for many that you will become an Alumni Association member, probably a life member, because there are so many legacy alumni that we have. Their whole families went to Penn State, so it's almost a familial expectation for some folks. I don't think that the success is because we offer benefits that are, just so wonderful that you have to participate in order to get those. I think that my predecessors did a fantastic job of selling and then reinvesting the money from life memberships. In fact, out of that 176,000, about 73% or so are life members. So when you think about renewal rates, retention rates and stuff, we're not trying to renew 176,000 people. We're trying to renew about 30,000 or so. And we're trying to grow from that base. We're also trying to convert those annuals to life members. So, we have some models that we're working on right now in terms of how are we going to grow this number. But if we were on the treadmill where we had to renew or acquire 176,000 a year, I don't think it would be a successful model. It's the strength of the life memberships, which I want to add one other thing. Life memberships are a double-edged sword, right? Because when somebody's a life member, they expect to derive benefits for life, and you have to be prepared to offer those benefits for life, or else you risk upsetting the constituent, and we never want to do that. That's like the worst thing we can do, right? Roger Williams, who was really key in starting a lot of this, and then Paul Clifford, who followed and came before me, I give them both a tremendous amount of credit because they were judicious in how they invested those resources, and they created what's functionally an endowment made up of almost all the revenue derived from life membership, which is created a bedrock for us in terms of us
Sure.
retaining our
Yeah.
independence and operating. That is a difficult battle to fight as a leader, because you have all kinds of folks who want to dip into that cash today, right? You get that money from a life membership. Well, we could put that to use right now. And they exhibited a lot of control, self-control to not do that. So, that's another reason why this model still works today, because we're funded in a way that we can.
Meet Alumni Q, the only all-in-one platform built exclusively for higher education. From everyday events and email outreach to online giving, directories, membership management, and seamless integrations, Alumni Q helps institutions connect, engage, and inspire. Handling major reunions or homecomings? Alumni Q's signature events service has you covered with rules-based registration, name tag printing, real-time reporting, and giving integration. Visit alumniq.com to request a demo and start making meaningful connections today.
I almost tipped my hand too much when I was asking Reggie the question, but I think there are 5 is probably too small, but it's less than 20. It's a very small number, and it's large. Power 4 football conference, public institutions that that have probably north of 500,000 alumni. If you don't hit those criteria, then you're probably going to have a hard time with a membership dues program. So while you guys may be at around 20%, if my math is right, does that sound right, Reggie?
Yeah.
The typical, if you look at a lot of the CAAE schools, they'll tell you that their membership is under 5%. And when you get to that point and you're smaller than 500,000, it's not a sustainable business model, frankly. And I worry about schools that try to push it when 95+% of your alumni have voted with their feet by not joining. It's banging your head against the wall with the 3 or 4% that have. I just don't think it's a sustainable model. And what's happening as you get younger, increasingly they're less likely to be joiners. So if I had to look at it, if I had to guess, Reggie, the chart of your membership is probably skewing older, and it gets a little bit, kind of drops as you get younger. But the fact is, 172,000 members who have paid either a lifetime or their annual dues is generating a large amount of revenue you can't just walk away from. I totally get that, right? And the big question is, when you get rid of a model, how do you replace the revenue? And there's a lot of schools who are struggling with that right now. And Reggie, I'm sure you've seen this in CAAE. A lot of your colleagues there have been fighting that battle for the last 2 decades, really. But so Ryan, my long-winded answer to your question is, I think it's only for a small group of select colleges, and most places will end up in an interdependent model with an institution that's helping fund an alumni engagement effort that's called an alumni association. That's how I think of it.
Reggie,
Yeah.
I would say yours is kind of interdependent too, right? I mean, you have a dual title, and I mean, you just carry the membership model. What is the case for the paid membership model in 2026, and how do you keep demonstrating value to renew and to grow it?
Yeah. Well, we technically are interdependent in a sense, but we're pretty independent as far as it goes on the spectrum. A very small portion of our revenue comes from any sort of university support. So, basically a portion of salaries, but all operating expenses are funded by the Alumni Association through a healthy mix, a very healthy mix of revenues, of which a pillar is the membership. Ryan, I'm sorry, what was the nature of what was the rest of your question?
It's just the case for the membership model in general. I mean, I think Chris was alluding to the fact that that's a lot of money to walk away from, but how do you demonstrate the value of that membership and so that you can continue to renew and grow it?
Yeah. Thank you. We're diving into this deep right now, because the fact is our number has been pretty stagnant for about 10 years. It hasn't grown. It hasn't shrunk a whole lot. We're seeing, retention rates and acquisition rates basically be equivalent to those that choose or are unable to retain membership. People join the membership model they become members for a variety of reasons, all of which are personal. For some people, it's just their family legacy. For example, we get a lot of people who are gifted life memberships from family, as a graduation gift, for example, or as a recognition of an accomplishment. We have a lot of people that join because of the benefits. For some people, it's a purely economic decision. I can spend $50 a year for this, and then I will get this much back from discounts and that kind of thing. I think some people do it just because it's what's expected. There's a generation, and Chris, you're right, that it skews to an older generation. Many passionate alumni within that group, but I think that it was a joiner mindset that was a little bit different. And then the other thing is tradition. And Chris, I think you're spot on when you say that I wouldn't recommend going to a dues paid membership model if you don't already have one and it's pretty successful. Because frankly, it's very hard to get off the ground if you're starting one that's brand new, and it's a pretty heavy investment for staff, and for your communication channels as well. So I wouldn't encourage somebody to start one if they don't have one. If you already have one and it's successful, it might be worth investing in, but some of it's by necessity too. And, you guys alluded to this. I mean, we, as a standalone 501c3, like, we need revenue, and we count on this as one of our pillars of revenue to help us continue to operate. I think that this is why you see, I think it's a domino that falls as we see a continued march in our field towards integration of, alumni relations and development. I would argue that we are fundraisers in a way. So I'm not pushing against it. I think it's a healthy thing for our profession in general. But I think, unfortunately, for some schools, this is happening out of necessity and not out of strategic desire, right? Or alumni desire. I think that they have to merge. And I've seen this happen at a few institutions where they merged Alumni Association with Foundation or with the Advancement Division because they didn't have a choice, right? They were becoming insolvent. And as such, this is not necessarily, I would say, the best way to try to create the revenue that you may need to remain independent.
Right. How do you balance serving? I know for a fact that Paul and Roger before didn't just try to engage the paid membership. They were always engaging the whole population. But how do you balance? You have 176,000 now, but 600,000 plus who are not members. How do you balance those who aren't members in terms of trying to keep them engaged and supporting Penn State in whatever way they choose to, maybe not joining an alumni association?
Yeah, this is a tough question. It's a simple one to ask. I think it's a really hard one to answer for a few reasons. The first is that I do wear two hats, right? I have the Penn State hat, which is Associate Vice President of Alumni Relations. I'm the Chief Alumni Officer for the institution. And when I wear that hat, it's real easy, right? My job is to engage all alumni for the entire institution, whether it's pipeline building or engagement for the other benefits that we may derive from it, or engagement because it's just a good thing to do. I mean, that's an easy answer. We do it because we should, right? As an institution. When I put on my CEO hat, that's a little bit different because I have a defined constituency with that. I have a lot of potential constituents, right? Anybody who's not a dues paid member could become a dues paid member. We would love them to be. And so with that hat on, I'm constantly trying to demonstrate the value of the organization to people. Where it gets really interesting is that wearing two hats, I have two bosses. I have the Vice President of Advancement, Jay Davenport, who is a wonderful human, outstanding boss, a visionary in our field, I would say.
You got a great one there for sure.
He's awesome. And we've had many wonderful conversations about the nature of engagement and why we should be doing it from an institution's standpoint. My other boss is my board, my governing board, led by my board president, Susan Robinson, who's also a wonderful human and very, very, very intelligent. But we have at times priorities that may be viewed as competing. How to balance it? Ask me in a year, right? We'll see.
Not a fair question. 1 month in, so I'm sorry.
Am I still employed in a year? Well, then I'm probably doing an okay job at it, But I mean, I guess I don't want to avoid the question. I mean, philosophically, I think that we do value all alumni, whatever hat I'm wearing. I value all. It's our responsibility to engage with all of them. it really boils down to we're going to give a little bit of extra and different kind of love to our dues paid members because they have participated. They raised their hands
Right.
and
Exactly.
voted with their checkbooks and said, we want to be a part of this. And as such, we've committed to offering them services and benefits that you only get if you participate in that way. So it's a simple answer, but
Yeah, that's
harder to
fair,
execute.
Reggie. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, and we'll ask you again in a year, and you'll tell us the answer.
Yeah,
But
fair
but,
enough.
but the other interesting point is that some of those members are not alums, correct? You have non-alumni members of the association.
Many. We have many. And, some of it gets to what do we count as an alumnus or alumna at Penn State? For example, we don't count certificate holders, for example. To my shock, we don't count what we have called X's at other places, people that did, 24 credit hours or 48 credit hours or fewer. We do not count those in our numbers. So when I say 820,000, I mean 820,000 that have, matriculated to degree, right, at some point in time or another. So, we do count a little differently, but anybody who loves Penn State, we would love to be a part of our alumni membership, and many, many, many are families, parents, boosters, all kinds of folks.
Reggie, before we lose our listening audience on LinkedIn, I wanted to just ask how you see the membership model evolving. I know you're having lots of discussions. Do you have an inclination as to what the future holds? Different tiers, digital offerings, different pathways for that younger cohort that's not used to a subscription model? I remember actually marinating on what that could look like with Paul Clifford back when he was still in the role. But how do you see membership evolving over the next few years?
This is another one. This is a tough one for me to answer because the short answer is I'm not exactly sure. Right? We have a riddle that we have to solve. We have to stay relevant if we want to maintain this model going forward. And you can only rely on nostalgia or obligation for so long, right? We're forced to continually reevaluate our value proposition. In fact, I would say that's one of the first orders of business for us here is creating a value proposition. It's very difficult for us to explain in 30 seconds why you should be a member other than, well, because you're a Penn Stater. That's why you should be a member, right? And that's not a compelling argument to me.
Right.
It will be for some, but I think in general, it's not. So, how do I see it evolving? I mean, I think we need to continue to look at our benefits for those that are motivated by benefits. I think that we can look at things like access, continuing education. We have a world campus that, we've had some early conversations about how do we, dovetail into some asynchronous learning opportunities for people that may be inclined there. We demonstrate the value of the professional network. We have career services, for example. We have alumni career services that you have access to if you're a member. We're going to be investing in that. That's a program I'm going to be growing significantly. I think it's underutilized right now and under promoted. But we're going to continue to look at those benefits. And then the other element is how are we communicating these? Because communication desires, they change, they evolve, and then they do it again a couple years later, right? So, for a time, everything was postcards and snail mail, then email. We're moving back to a lot of snail mail now. It's pretty effective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's expensive, but do you want to get your word out and have it seen, or do you not, and save money, right? That's kind of the choice that we're being forced to make here. Texting is something we're looking at. So, I mean, we're going to have to continue to evolve in every single way, but I don't think that there's a single answer here. I think it's just going to continue to change and evolve in the years to come.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing you navigate through that. Ryan, you want to skip to the close here, and we'll jump. We'll have that next question.
We'll say goodbye to our LinkedIn audience with our announcement of the next show. I believe it's September the 11th, Friday. We have Mackenzie Heiser. Mackenzie was the Chief Advancement Officer at Trinity Christian College. They just closed their doors forever in August. So we're going to talk with Mackenzie about what that was like, raising money and engaging alumni during a period when the school knew it was going to be shutting its doors. And I've spoken with Mackenzie before. I had her on my keynote podcast, and she's a great really spirited person and had a lot of great things to say. So I'm excited to share Mackenzie's views with our Alumless audience as well. And for everybody listening by podcast, we'll be back right after the break with a bonus segment with our friend Reggie Bustinza from Penn State.